AP Psychology, The Brain. By Emily Cardona, Casey Kramer, and Aaron Cassidy.
A neuron is a nerve cell. It is the building block for the nervous system. Now, let's explore the parts of a neuron. Dendrites are bushy extensions that receive messages. Try to remember, they listen, so they'll bring in the info. Axons send the message to neurons, muscles, and glands. The myelin sheath is a fatty tissue layer that insulates axons and helps with speed impulses. It also helps control degeneration, which can lead to multiple sclerosis. The threshold is a level of stimulation required to trigger a neural impulse, or the all or none response. It either fires or it doesn't with full strength. Remember to think of a toilet. In order for the water to go down, you first need to trigger it with the handle. Now, what's a neurotransmitter?
What's a neurotransmitter?
Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that cross the synaptic gap between neurons. They also bind to receptor sites and allow ions to flow in them. One neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. It affects muscle contractions, learning, and memory. If you have an undersupply of acetylcholine, some patients can have Alzheimer's, and if you have an oversupply, there's likely to be muscle spasms. Our endorphins control the pain and pleasure within our bodies. An example of endorphins are opiates, and they are associated with many drug problems. Dopamine affects our movements, attention, emotion, and learning. It is also associated with our reward center. If you have an undersupply, there could be a chance that you have Parkinson's disease, but if you have an oversupply, there could be a chance that you have schizophrenia. Serotonin affects our mood, hunger, sleep, and arousal. If you have an undersupply, you could be more likely to have depression, and if you have an oversupply, you could be more likely to have autism. Norepinephrine helps control alertness and arousal. If there's an undersupply, you could be more likely to have depression and mental disorders, and if you have an oversupply, you could be more susceptible to anxiety. GABA is a major inhibitory neurotransmitter. It affects our sleep and wake cycles and turns the brain off. If there's an undersupply, seizure, tremors, and insomnia could occur, and if there's an oversupply, sleeping and eating disorders could occur. Glutamate is a major excitatory neurotransmitter. It is involved with memory and turns the brain on. An oversupply could lead to overstimulated brain, which leads to seizures, migraines, and epilepsy. The nervous system uses 3 types of neurons. The first is our sensory neurons, which are afferent, or they carry incoming information from the body's tissue and sensory receptors to the brain and spinal cord. The interneurons is where the communication takes place internally and intervene between sensory input and motor output. Our motor neurons are efferent, which means they carry outgoing information from the brain and spinal cord to our muscles and glands. The nervous system is broken up into 2 parts. First, we have our body's decision maker, the central nervous system, which contains the brain and spinal cord. Then we have the peripheral nervous system that connects neurons to the rest of the body. The PNS is split into the somatic nervous system, which controls the body's skeletal muscles, and the autonomic nervous system, which is split into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic decreases heartbeat, conserves energy, and basically calms down the body, while the sympathetic nervous system arouses the body, mobilizes energy, and increases heartbeat. The sympathetic nervous system also contains adrenaline, which controls your fight or flight mode in your body. There are many ways to observe the brain's patterns. To start, an EEG or electroencephalogram amplifies recordings of the waves of electrical activity. A CT or CAT scan is an X-ray photograph. A PET scan looks for hot spots of sugar glucose to determine the brain's activity. The most advanced is an MRI, which generates images that distinguish among different types of soft tissue and is used to see the structure of the brain. Now, let's look at the structure of the brain. The lower brain performs life-saving operations, and we are unaware of its functions. brainstem is where the spinal cord enters the skull. It is the crossover point for nerves and is used for automatic survival functions. The medulla controls the heartbeat and breathing for the body. The reticular formation is the filter or relay system and controls arousal. If something were to occur to this area of the brain, you could fall into a deep coma. The thalamus works with the sensory switchboard, which works with all the senses except for smell. It also receives higher brain functions. The cerebellum coordinates voluntary movements and nonverbal voluntary movements, like balancing and walking. The limbic system is associated with emotions and drive. It's most associated with food and sex drive. The hippocampus processes memory and also forms new memories. The amygdala is what causes aggression and fear. The hypothalamus controls the hormones and emotions that go through your body and directs several maintenance activities including eating, drinking, and body temperature, and is also known as the pleasure center. The frontal lobe is associated with speaking, muscle movement, making plans, and judgment. Phineas Gage is best known for having a pole go through his frontal lobe. The temporal lobe allows auditory stimulation from the opposite side. The parietal lobe contains the sensory cortex, which registers body sensation. The occipital lobe receives visuals from the opposite sides. The association areas are areas of the cerebral cortex that are not involved in primary motor or sensory functions. They're involved in higher mental functions such as learning, remembering, thinking, and speaking. Aphasia is impairment of language, usually caused by left hemisphere damage either to Broca's area or Wernicke's area. Broca's area is the area of the left frontal lobe that directs the muscle movements involved in speech. Wernicke's area is the area of the left temporal lobe involved in language comprehension. Plasticity is when the neural tissue can recognize and respond to damage, and mostly occurs when young. The corpus callosum is the largest bundle of neural fibers. It connects the two brain hemispheres and carries messages between the two. The endocrine system is the body's slow chemical communication system. It is a set of glands that secrete hormones into the bloodstream and affect our interest in sex, food, and aggression. Hormones are chemical messengers, mostly those manufactured by the endocrine glands and produced in one tissue and affect another. They affect growth, reproduction, metabolism, and mood. Adrenal glands are just above the kidneys. They secrete hormones that help to rouse the body in times of stress by increasing heartbeat, blood pressure, and sugar, and they give energy. The pineal gland produces melatonin, regulates the circadian rhythm, and is associated with seasonal affective disorder.